really a nice understanding that you gave us in terms of where we are poised as far as India is concerned. We figured that electrification, grids, all of it is essentially Dr. Copper, as it's really known as. From a capacity enhancement perspective, how do you see, in fact, this is to all the producers, that where and how are you really looking at enhancing capacity for India to play a really big role on the global perspective?
Sure, like as most of us here would be aware that Kutch Copper Limited, which is a 100% subsidiary of Adani Enterprises, has built a 0.5 million ton copper smelting and refining capacity in the state of Gujarat. And the vision is to take it to 1 million ton. And by taking it to 1 million ton, we would be the single largest producer in the world at a single location. So when you talk about the challenges, I think like any other industry, the challenges do exist. I think the one biggest challenge, as Abhishek was also mentioning, is on how do we secure the concentrates, the copper concentrate, the raw materials for feeding the smelter. I think that's a critical challenge for the copper industry at this moment because the mines feeds have actually reduced quite a lot. There, what we see is for the next 2 years, there would be a deficit of close to 1 million ton of copper in concentrates. So that's a huge volume to even compensate by any means. So having said that, I think when it comes to India's story, I think the government has taken a lot of proactive measures in terms of bringing copper as part of the critical minerals. I think that's one big initiative. And the government has also taken measures in, including with the private partnership in exploration of copper reserves in India and giving them licenses. And also kind of collaboration with other copper-rich countries like Chile. I think the government, the Mines Ministry has also taken proactive measures in terms of collaborating with companies like Hindalco for enhancing the domestic production and how can we kind of have a better knowledge sharing with energy-rich countries and producers. And I think what is more important is having all this done, how do we really get this done? So it has to be through a multiple long-term kind of an agreement, which the producers will have to have with the miners. I think that would, in terms of securing your feed, I think that would secure your feed for the smelters. I think that is very important. And I think the other challenges, I think when it comes to cost of production, India is an young nation. We have a lot of skilled manforce. And then we have the kind of energy cost, which is the lowest in India. So the workforce is there. And then you have one of the lowest cost producers in the world. And I think what is more important is on the regulatories. I would not say it's a regulatory hurdle, but I would say it's more to do with compliance. You have to comply with the laws of the land. I think that is something which every country goes through. So I think these are the things I think we are poised for a good growth going forward. And I think the next decade is for India. And I think there are a lot of producers who are willing to put their money in copper. And I'm sure we'll be there.
So as you say that the next decade is for India, I also want to add that the exchange supports in all these endeavors to be a part of this journey as far as producers and the manufacturers are concerned. We look forward to more participation that would come in as far as the exchange is concerned. I move on to to Anil. Anil, a very critical aspect. I think confidence building comes in from standardization. Even at the exchange, we strongly believe that standardized products are the ones that really add value. So when it comes to BIS standards, whether it's copper rods, whether it's cathodes, in supporting a transparent market, how does really branding create value for producers? That's one. I also would want to understand, how does the exchange empanelment really help, the industry, from a standardization perspective?
Today, while the SEBI chairman was speaking, I noted a few points. One very important statement which I liked very much was that we must create an ecosystem which is resilient to global shocks, but responsive to India's needs. So in that context, and when we were setting context in our earlier presentation, we saw that India is going to be the second biggest producers and consumer, the second biggest producers and consumer of copper by 2035. So only 10 years. The other two in the top three, China and US, they already have a very strong exchange, a very independent exchange, and they have their own set of standards which are independently running. What the SEBI chairman also highlighted today, and a lot of other the speakers also, one point was about global geopolitical uncertainties. What we are also looking at is that tariffs and technical barriers are being used as a geopolitical tool, which means there's a need to build capability to be independent. And in that context, the SEBI chairman used a word which is self-reliance. So I think in that context, it is very important to have a standard which we can call our own and which can also function independently. Now what BIS has done is that prior to BIS, we did not have any domestic reference as far as technical specifications or any base was concerned. So now BIS has provided us one foundation across different metals and across products also. We also saw that India is producing for Indian domestic demand and not so much for the global, at least for the next 10 years, which means that the product that we manufacture have to be seen in the context of the Indian requirement specifically. Our requirements are going to be varied. We will have maybe up to 25% requirement in the highly efficient and sensitive markets like EV and energy and renewables. But there will also be some other markets, and we have to be careful about our own requirements, and our standard we should be able to customize based on Indian requirement. And BIS can enable that in the long run. So what I think is that BIS has provided the foundation. Coming to which will be very useful going forward also. Coming to the second point about branding or taking some standardization forward by MCX, I think that is the next logical step. And that is a step in the right direction. What we have to see is that those efforts complement what BI has already created. And those should not be considered as some additional requirement. It should not come across as an additional requirement. As long as it complements, the acceptance will be very good. And it will be easier to move to those changes. And one more context that we discussed was that in India, the focus on value-added product or the share of value-added product in the overall trade is very high as compared to global trade flows that we look at. So in that context, maybe in future, there could be a requirement of creating some the futures for some products also, some value-added products also. And then we cannot look at some of the global exchanges because they may not have those products listed. So in that context also, BIS standardization will help as a natural first step to move to those products. So I think these steps are in the right direction, keeping the Indian trade and Indian demand in the context. So thank you.
Thanks, Anil. Since we're talking about standardization, value-added products, what we gather or what we understand from the market is, we're a very large CC rod, market. Sanat, I want to put this, question across to you, that there has been a growing demand of CC rod as far as the cable industry is concerned. What steps really are required from India, for us to become kind of a regional reference for CC rod? That's point one. And could Copper Futures, with a good impaneled CC rod product, help us to establish a benchmark? And could India become actually a regional hub for that?
Yeah. First, I'd like to thank you for inviting me here. Regarding copper rods, we use a lot of copper rods for manufacturing our own product. So from our perspective, there are three types of rods in copper. One is oxygen-free, then there's electrolytic copper, and there's fire refined. So what we see in our product, we use the highest purity of rods. But in the market, there is some unorganized market that exists, which does not use the highest purity. So what happens is it creates energy loss for the entire nation as such. It's a national loss because you lose energy and there are hotspots, so it's a safety hazard. So we always look for standardization, and whether it's BIS is a great initiative, whether it's the three primary suppliers standardizing is great initiative. But basically the key is standardization and enforcement. Now BIS can only be enforced if it's actually imbibed by the spirit of all people and the government. It can't be done only purely by the government. So people need to be educated from a point of view of how poor quality affects their products, the country as a whole. So yeah, and your second question was?
So, how would you look at, the empanelment of a CC rod?
Yeah.
If we were to be looking at the exchange and, how do you look at branding by
it's
the
a great
exchange and how does it
idea.
really add value?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. So it adds on to the BIS standardization. If the exchange also has a standard in line with BIS, it's a great thing. It'll add liquidity to the market, and I mean it's not going to harm anyone. So I think it's a great option to add it instead of cathodes. It's never done anywhere else in the world, I think, but it's a good idea, I'd say.
You think there's a scope to create
There is a
kind of a
scope
regional
to create
benchmark?
if it's benchmarked well, and standardized in different segments. Because as I said earlier, there are three different types of rods that exist. So if it's standardized well, for example, I think 80% of all of us use the ETP grade or the UFC grade. So if it's standardized well and assayed well, I'd say, then it's a great idea.
Thanks. So, Sanat,
Quickly, on this point, as Sanat was rightly mentioning, having the right standards in place is one important point to start with. But I think more important is the enforcement. And, till cathode, it still remains a commodity, right? And there is a control. As soon as you cast into rods, one coil is about 6 kilometers. It is very difficult to really measure the properties of the 6 kilometers. And hence, the control is always on the input material and the processes. So I think today, the way we are positioned, there are a lot of variables in terms of controlling, as he was mentioning. In fact, there is fourth type of rod, which is also called as Super D, right, which is also getting into the very sensitive applications, and we see, as he rightly mentioned, the fire and the energy losses. So I think when it comes to rod as a product to be traded, I think we need to have important deliberations in place, because we are talking about people's lives here. The 70-80% of the fire which happen is because of the hotspots in the copper wires and the failure of insulation there. So good idea, but it requires a lot of deliberation to really go ahead with this. Thank you.
thanks. Thank you. Sanat, another question that I feel, because you're from the manufacturing side, I think it's important if you could give us a perspective of, how do you really see MCX, from a hedging perspective, vis-a-vis the international markets, how well we are poised, as a benchmark for the domestic industry, would really help us to give an idea.
So I personally use MCX quite a lot compared to the LME. I mean, I hedge on both exchanges, but the MCX is great for us because it hedges as everybody here has said, it hedges the rupee also. So you don't have to hedge the rupee separately. Also, brokerages are lower, margins are a little higher, but it still represents an Indian price at the end of the day. So it does represent the Indian demand and supply. It does also represent in the forward premiums the interest and the warehousing that India has. So it's not mimicking the LME. It shows a correct picture of what India is doing. So we use it quite a lot. I mean, the only thing I would like to add here is probably more liquidity to the exchange, more participation from everybody. It would help the market and make it a global exchange for sure.
Thanks.
I think we'll also truly appreciate MCX and the larger MCX team, how it has evolved over years. So we have LME, we have COMEX, SHFE, and really proud to see how MCX evolved over time. But yes, as you mentioned about the liquidity factor, I think there are some distortion in the prices wherein the primary players are not able to really participate, because you have some material coming at zero duty, some material coming from various other dynamics. And hence, really, the price evolvement is something which is distorted, which is restricting our participation. So I think that also we need to see to really increase the liquidity, what Sanat has mentioned.
Since we're speaking on liquidity and we're discussing how to widen participation on MCX. I'm going to put this question to Kishore, who heads the commodities at Motilal. When you look at global exchanges, LME or COMEX, are there areas which make hedging easier for probably the industrial players that use that exchange? Point one, and what is it that really we need to do in terms of wanting to drive greater liquidity to make the price discovery more robust and, of course, ultimately become the local benchmark? We are to a certain extent, but to ensure that this kind of widens the participation. So,
I think, Rashmi, it's ironic actually, and we both started together, and a lot of my industry colleagues, we have all been waiting for the last 20 years. And the producers want to hedge, the users, industry want to hedge. We heard Amphi close to around 1 lakh crores in gold and silver ETFs. So the retail investors want to invest. Speculators are there. The algo guys and HFT guys want to do. SEBI wants to promote. We heard SEBI chairman in the morning want to promote, and we also heard SEBI GM speaking. Exchange wants to do, but still nothing is moving. So I think we have to blame all it's as a collective failure. We are still not reached that levels. We have a very successful model, age-old model LME. We have Shanghai, which brought that late success. It's very difficult to copy another exchange and a benchmark model and then do their own benchmarking. So today China is standing proudly in front of the world and commanding. They have their own benchmarks. If tomorrow if they lose the connect with the West, they can stand upon. So today I don't think we can say that, right? So that's, and today in this world where the entire geopolitics is a challenge and economics is a challenge, strategically it becomes extremely important to have a robust market. So we all agree, we all need, so somewhere we have to connect these dots and move, right? So being that context, I think the 2 or 3 major issues which I can say, issues are, we know that actually, but I just put it back into the perspective. Of course, I think Sir has mentioned in the morning that about the margins. Of course, we have too much margins. Second, we can't fund them because the industry always requires, when we go for hedging, the cash flow is something which everyone wants to manage, the working capital requirements, and that's going to eat up into the working capital. So if we can have some kind of margin funding or taking care of the MTMs, because that's what LME does, that because it's a forward contract, you don't need to pay day-to-day MTMs, and the cash flow is not impacted. So somehow we can address that situation, and we have a lot of large ecosystem which can take care of it actually, right, at the end of it. And third is that any differential margins also even will help. If the regulators believe that these are highly speculative, volatile and all those things, but actually you can have commercials and non-commercials having different margining system, which again we have in the global markets, that if you are a hedger, you can have lower margins because you don't bring that systematic risk to the entire ecosystem. And the critical component again is that we have a very developed algorithmic trading system in equity markets because of the colo and all the facilities. Of course, I think that's in the discussion for quite some time, which will bring those bridge because the industry always wants liquidity in far month. The retail clients which always wants liquidity in the near month. So there's a gap. So retail cannot go to far month and industry cannot come to the near month. So somewhere in the middle is where the algo guys, the prop desk guys will be able to bridge that gap to bring that risk from the far months to the near months and spread it out to the retail, is where the entire ecosystem has to build up. So how can we engage the middlemen, who is the bridge between the far month contract to the near month contract, and how we build that ecosystem is also critical. Right now, that ecosystem is very small for commodity markets, the algo, HFT, or even the colo kind of thing. And I think if we are able to do this, of course, I think all the participants here wants to participate, but we have to connect these dots together, which will bring and address these liquidity issues.
Thanks, Kishore. It's showing red, it's showing time's up. As much as I love copper, because somebody said the first love, so for me also first love is copper amongst all the metals. Yes, I started my journey with copper here. So I want to really thank each of the panelists for spending time. Sanat, Mr. Krishnan, Abhishek, Anil, Kishore, thank you for all your perspectives. I will just wrap this up saying that as Mr. Krishnan said, next decade belongs to us and to India. We are really poised to take that next leap forward, which is what the theme of our conversation is all about today. There is, as far as shortage is concerned, there is a concentrate shortage. Capacity enhancements are required. Our producers, of course, are well poised to take the next leap forward as far as enhancement is concerned. We, of course, have the consumption side where we have, increasing as far as, because of the electrification, EV, urbanization, infrastructure, all of this is going to require a huge amount of copper. And as far as the exchange is concerned, I think we've got some great perspective from Kishore that, how we really need to work towards bringing in liquidity. We want the industry to join us, from the industry side, regulatory side, as well as the exchange as a combination. I think we can become the next price benchmark. Standardization, of course, is required. If we look at some new contracts, it's a great idea to, have this conversation that why standardization is important as far as copper is concerned. So I'm going to wrap up with a big thanks to all of you for, having a lively presentation. Sorry for eating up any other panel's time. Thank you so much.
All right. I'm requesting the panelists to please stay back. Thank you, Ms. Rashmi. Thank you so much. Now I would like to invite on stage Mr. Shivanshu Mehta, Head Bullion LCX, to felicitate our panel. And let's give a round of applause for our moderator as well, everyone. Thank you. To the second panel discussion of today, that's titled Aluminium, Light Metal with Heavy Impact. Can we please have an AV for it? All right. This session will be moderated by Mr. Rishi Nathani, Chief Business Officer, MCX. So may I please request you to join us on stage. And along with him, we have our distinguished panelists, starting with Mr. Vijay Murthy, CMO, Aluminium, Vedanta Group. Vedanta is India's largest producer of aluminium. Then we have Mr. Piyush Agarwal, Head Price Risk Management, Hindalco Limited, Metals flagship of Aditya Birla Group. Mr. Puneet Jagatramka, Executive Vice President, Central Procurement, JSW Limited. JSW is a global conglomerate having business interests in steel, energy, infrastructure, and paints. Then we have Mr. Vivek Dubey, Associate Vice President, Procurement, RR Kabel Limited. RR Kabel is